Hi, welcome to Corework Garage Clips. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about what we discuss in our training with respect to how do we move someone through a generalized gravity Pilates program so you understand where our sequencing comes into play, how we bring in our foundations and our principles, and how you also can progress someone. This is just going to be, again, just a clip. If you want more information, you're always welcome to come to one of our courses or just call up and see if we can have a course come to you. So with that said, let's just give you some general information so you feel you can get started. Our theory behind our work is to really take gravity Pilates fundamentals, which is the concentration, the breathing, the isolation, the centering of the body or the strength, the control aspect, the isolation, so you're thinking about what muscles are strong and weak, focusing in on precision, that aspect of control, like I've already mentioned. Precision, all this builds into fluidity as well as a routine. And if I haven't mentioned it, of course, the breath aspect. So we try to incorporate this no matter what gravity Pilates program you do. We have those kind of elements of the concentration, the fluidity, the breathing coming into play. That focus of some of the exercises are really isolated to that more of a compound movement structure where you're also focusing more on strength and focusing on that control aspect. We try to build in all of this into any one program that we do. So if you're doing a Reformat Evolved, if you're doing a Fresh Breath, if you're doing Amplified, Reformat Amplified, you feel like these components are factored into the program. Within the components, within these foundations or fundamentals, you have the principles, and the principles are how we cue, and that's alignment, breath, and core control. Alignment refers to how we actually cue the body during the exercises. In the garage tip sections of Corework, we're going to kind of review generally the exercises of Corework. But for the most part, we're going to focus in on how to keep the body into the most neutral, how to allow the body to move in and out of neutral, and how to make the person more aware of where they're moving. That's in terms of the alignment aspect. In terms of the breath, if you look at our manual, if you hear us cue, a lot of the movements within Pilates in general is catered or dictated by that of the breath. My philosophy on it is that I would like for you to breathe normally. Number one, just take a nice deep breath in. If you can think about lifting your first rib up or your breastbone high to the sky and allowing the breath to come down, out to the sides and almost back, which we call that posterior lateral thoracic breath, that's the best breath to really maximize that oxygen going into your lungs and getting the best breath support. In Pilates, it's more of a voluntary breath. So obviously you're breathing right now and you're not thinking, inhale now, exhale now, inhale, exhale. It's just a natural involuntary reaction. With Pilates, we make it more of a voluntary reaction, so that voluntary aspect will help pull in more of the abdominal aspect, which will hopefully carry this overflow over to the pelvic floor, which will then help further stabilize the body. That's why you hear the again, you're never kind of going to do a breath because that's going to create a relaxation. A breath creates enough of a resistance to help pull that pelvic floor in and up and activate it without pushing out or creating just a complete relaxation effect. So that's why you always hear the a lot with the Pilates movements. So with respect to the breath and gravity Pilates, we have written our manuals in terms of how to move according to that breath pattern. I will always say, I just want you to breathe, number one. I personally feel adding that breath component in can be one of the most challenging aspects that someone gets or has to get in Pilates. One of the last aspects some people may get. And one of the best aspects to utilize sometimes if you want to move slowly through an exercise to teach a coordination effect, if you want to pick up the pace to get that fluidity a little bit faster tempo, you can use the breath in that way. Careful when you're discussing it that when you're discussing inhale, exhale, that some of your participants may focus so much on where I was supposed to inhale or exhale that they forget what they were supposed to do in terms of the movement. So use it as a tool to help with the coordination, to change tempo. However, make sure that you understand to keep it generalized maybe in the beginning, especially people who are unfamiliar with Pilates. The next thing that we talk about, these ABCs, the alignment, the breath, the last is the core control component, or what we also call the stability component. This section you can spend hours upon. You can probably attend any conference right now and go to something on core stabilization. It's the buzzword. It's something that we're becoming more and more aware of. However, with respect to gravity Pilates, what we talk about core stabilization is really when you look at someone, do you find that their abdominals are just kind of hanging? Are they able to pull their abs in and up in a manner that you eventually want it to be at a subconscious level, but in a manner that they're able to not only pull in and up, but are they able to maintain that? So are they able to gather the strength, one, to activate the abdominals and the lower abdominals and in the pelvic floor, and are they able to maintain that activation as they move through a movement pattern? So that's what we're looking for in terms of core control. So that's our theory with respect to fundamentals as well with respect to the foundations and the principles. Well, that is your fundamentals, foundations, and then the principles of how to actually cue the exercises. So the next thing I'm going to talk about a little bit is about the design. In design overall, you might look at the sequence of exercises and say, you know, that's something that I don't usually do. I learned a different sequence of exercises. I learned that you should flow the exercises like this. Our exercises are based a lot upon what is the incline level of the GTS. Do we want to focus more on strength or control, which I discussed in earlier garage clips. In this series, I said, you know what, for footwork, we're going to go a little bit higher. We're going to have around a level 5. And we keep the incline level about that level so that we can get enough resistance with the footwork, the hip rolls, the single leg series. Just like any of our other courses, a lot of the times our sequence is based on maximizing the position of the GTS, maximizing one's body position on the GTS, making sure that if someone has that accessory that they're using, let's say an arm pulley, we again try to use that to the best of its ability before we have to let it go, so that you don't find our exercises taking on an accessory, putting off an accessory, using the handles, then dropping the handles, then going to another exercise, then going back to the handles. The fluidity, that component we maintain in terms of what accessory we use, we keep it to the maximal time we can use it, that we actually then make sure that we minimize the amount of transitions, but we also focus in on the sequencing so that you're optimizing that muscle sequencing. So you're giving muscles a rest when they need a rest. And that's how you get this fluidity. Maximize body position, minimize the transitions of the GTS, optimize that muscle sequencing component. And last but not least, look at your participants' overall level of fitness. If you find that, you know what, I want to focus more on strength, this group can handle it, I'm going to choose this incline. You know what, this group, they've been using the GTS for a while. I actually want to do plyometrics to begin with in terms of footwork. Get them warmed up, and I'm going to have them do jumps the entire time. For any time we move from, you know, that whole footwork to single leg work, I'm going to have that be a plyometric section. I'm going to actually bring it to level 3 or 4. Then you have that set up in your head. So you still look at the sequence. You might keep the same exercises, but you might tweak the GTS according to that person's level or your participant's level of fitness. So that's our theory. Again, we look at the fundamentals, we look at the principles, you look at how you design, and last but not least, I'm just going to touch upon how would you progress someone. In the DVD that we gave you, we have a button that you can push for stage 2 and stage 3. Those exercises you can add in absolutely in stage 1, and absolutely you can add in the stage 3 and stage 1. There's no problem with that. But what we found with those exercises, they require a little bit more concentration, and they require a little bit more concentration because they require more coordination. That is why we added those into stage 2 and 3. You'll also notice that with stage 1, we kept the GTS pretty basic. We didn't add in double leg pulleys or standing platforms. The reason for that is because when we look to progress someone, we look at their strength, we look at their control, we look at, are they finding fluidity within their movement? Do they have that kinesthetic awareness? But we also look at, are they comfortable with the components of the GTS? You may have someone who's very advanced, but they're not necessarily machine oriented, and they get overwhelmed when you start to add on too many gadgets and gizmos. So that's why we kept some of the exercises with the standing platform and the double leg pulleys to a stage 2 and 3, because it was a complexity with respect to adding on more gadgets, more accessories. So if you feel your group can handle that, definitely start to add on those components. Go a little bit slower, because some of the exercises like kneeling breaststroke and semicircle take a little bit more concentration and control and a little bit more time to learn the movement pattern. But standing splits and things like that, they might be familiar with those movements and know if they feel comfortable with the standing platform, more gadgets, add it right in. So I hope that information helps you at least get started in incorporating core work within your routines that you're already doing and becoming a little bit more familiar with that of the reformer exercises and our overall gravity Pilates programming and how we've come up with the exercises and the routines. Thanks.